Welcome, folks, to this edition of the 700 Club. It's like the fires of hell. We can't conceive of anything as awful. The latest outbreak of wildfires in California is now the deadliest in the state's history. At least 44 people are dead as fires consume both ends of the state, and many people are still missing.
Most perished in the Northern California fire that devastated the town of Paradise. As Caitlin Burke reports, many of the victims lost their lives trying to flee the coming inferno.
The search for bodies in Northern California tells the terrifying story of the victims' attempts to escape. Rescue personnel finding the dead in or next to burned out cars, apparently overcome by smoke and flames before they could get away.
I'm surrounded by fire. I'm surrounded by fire right now. I don't know what to do.
It was just constant explosions, and cars are trying to go around on the side and bursting into flames, and people are getting out of their burning cars and running down the middle of the road.
Alan Pearce is a nurse. He risked his life evacuating patients from a hospital near Paradise, California, a town that has been completely burned to the ground. Authorities there still searching for more than 200 missing people. Meanwhile, in Southern California, firefighters are gaining ground on the Woolsey fire. But heavy winds are still a major issue, and crews are stretched thin.
This hits home on the fact that we are still in significant fire weather, and the existing fire is not our only concern.
Celebrities were among the hundreds of thousands forced to evacuate in the Malibu area, and they're also among those who are coming home to nothing. Actor Gerard Butler posted this photo of his burnt-out home on Instagram, thanking the Los Angeles Fire Department for their service.
It's gone. Everybody I know lost everything. It's real sad.
Across California, there are more than 8,000 firefighters battling these wildfires and trying to save as many homes and structures as possible. Caitlin Burke, CBN News.
Again, I say pray for those people. It's just horrible. We can't conceive of it. And the thing that you don't realize is how fast those things can spread. Those flames, those sparks jump across. And there's some people that are saying it may be some explosions off the electric power lines that are causing some of the problems as well. But I don't know the answer to that, but it's been speculated. But it doesn't matter where it came from, whether it was a campfire or whatever. Right now, it's spreading so rapidly, and the winds don't seem to be abating. They're up to 50, 60 miles an hour. Santa Ana winds blowing across that whole area, and dry tinder. It's just horrible. And again, I would say pray for the people in California and realize what it would be like. You've lost everything. As somebody said, this is my life. It's a couple of bags of stuff in the back of my pickup truck. This is everything. Well, it can't be everything. You know, we've got to have hope in something else besides our possessions. But just put your treasure where moth and rust won't corrode and where thieves don't break in and steal. Well, in other news, 1 week after votes were cast, the Florida Senate race is still not decided. Ephraim Graham has more of our top stories from the CBN Newsroom.
Pat, Republican Rick Scott's lead is just down to 13,000 votes over incumbent Democrat Bill Nelson. 67 counties are recounting more than 8 million ballots. Scott claims Nelson is trying to steal the election through fraud, citing irregularities and failure to comply with the law in Broward County. President Donald Trump even tweeted the election is, quote, infected and called for an end to the recount. A judge ruled there is no evidence of fraud and called on both sides to tone down the rhetoric. On CBN's Faith Nation program, Ken Blackwell of the Family Research Council said there are serious questions about the count in Broward.
I think there's enough lack of transparency. There are enough missed deadlines that it really does raise the question as to how they, in fact, found 83,000 votes after the deadline was established for them to at least give a vote count.
Former Florida Governor Jeb Bush said Broward election supervisor Brenda Snipes should be fired for incompetence. Another loss for the GOP as Democrat Kristen Sinema wins Arizona's open U.S. Senate seat. She beat Republican Martha McSally. Sinema's win makes her Arizona's first Democratic senator since 1994. She replaces Republican Senator Jeff Flake, who opted not to run. McSally might still make it to the Senate, however. John Kyle, who is filling John McCain's Senate seat, is expected to step down in January. And there is speculation Arizona's Governor Doug Ducey could appoint McSally. Pat?
Well, we want to take a look at that election because I think it's important. When we look at the ultimate result, it looks as if the Republicans are going to lose 40 seats in the House of Representatives. It looks like they may win one extra seat in the Senate, possibly two if that Florida race comes through and Bill Nelson goes down. But that will be it. Now, they're talking about 32 right now, but I think it'll go to 40. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to think a little bit with me as to what's going on in the world. What was the major issue in this election? Was it the caravan? Was it immigration? Was it the wall? None of those things. And despite the fact that we have had tremendous tax cuts, to the average citizen, what really counts is health care. Now, here's the deal. There was something called the Affordable Care Act. There was a man named Jonathan Gruber who said basically it was set up to fail. We set it to fail. We knew those exchanges wouldn't work, and we knew they would ultimately collapse. And when they did, we would then go to a single-payer health system with the government running it. The Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, said it's 2,300 pages, and he said we'll have to pass it so we can understand what's in it. There wasn't one single, you talk about this, all this talk about bipartisanship, there wasn't one single Republican vote in favor of that health care. It was an abomination, and the Republicans, as a man, ran against it, and they said, we're going to replace Obamacare, and we're going to, revoke it, and then we will replace it with something better. The House of Representatives had a tremendous bill, all passed. And certainly, they had provision for pre-existing illness. They had something that would not in any way count pregnancy as some kind of a disqualifying factor. And they had everything ready. Well, it came before the Senate, and there was one vote. And maybe we've got a picture of that one vote. And here he is right now. Senator John McCain of Arizona stood before the Senate, and he was a deciding vote, and he turned his hand down, and he killed that. You see that? He killed that measure, that one vote, took it out of the Senate. And they dropped it because then they had to get Judge Kavanaugh confirmed. They wanted to pass tax cuts and so forth. But they didn't return to it. And what did the Democrats use as an issue? They used health care, health care, health care, health care. And in the process, they took down 40. That's the total when it's finally all the counts over. Very distinguished congressman who'd been serving with distinction for a number of years. They took them all out, and they only won one extra seat in the Senate, unless maybe the Rick Scott thing turns out and Bill Nelson goes down. That would only be two. Other than that, it was a disaster. I'm not sure how many governors, but what happened was they were not able to turn the major states in the Midwest. For example, the governor of Wisconsin was defeated by the labor unions went after him. They did not succeed in Michigan. They did not succeed in the Midwest. And a lot of congressmen were defeated. So what happened? Well, that's the result of that particular election. But would they ever have a chance to do something else? We don't know. But what I do know is that the Democrats have socialists running a major part of their party. Bernie Sanders is a socialist. And there are others who are turning to socialists. And the young people in our society don't understand the difference. And I think back to England after World War II. Churchill led a coalition that beat the Nazis and brought forth a great victory. He comes home, and the people said, well, we don't think that you're exactly running the way we'd like you to. They turned him out of his seat, and they took over. The Labor Party took over. They socialized the railroads, and they socialized the steel, and they socialized the coal, and they ruined the economy. That's what's happening here in America, ladies and gentlemen. But remember, one person who was on a vendetta against Donald Trump. Now, the thing that's coming up, he's got a couple of years left to go until the general election. And unless something is done to change it, he is not going to be reelected unless he can win suburban women and, you know, get back. And those Hispanics on Nevada, they lost a Senate seat. Arizona, they lose a Senate seat. Texas, they almost lost the Senate seat. These are heavily Hispanic neighborhoods, and he's got to do something to reach out to those people, and he sure has got to do something to reach out to suburban women.
Well, it certainly shows us the significance of midterm elections and the ongoingness of what we choose there, but also the impact that's coming. 2 years flies by.
But you can't miss the mood of the election. They missed it on health care, and the Democrats demagogued the whole thing over and over and over again. But one man, and I'm not supposed to speak ill of the dead because he's passed on, but one vote by one man killed the repeal of Obamacare, which he had run on and which all of the Republicans had run on. And by failing to take care of that, you leave a vacancy, you leave a vacuum, and you don't deal with it, and it comes back to haunt you. So just, I hope as a nation we'll take a lesson from this before it's too late. But it seems like the young people in America don't have a clue about how bad socialism. They don't have a clue about what it is, and they think that, oh, isn't this wonderful, all this rhetoric and all this hoopla.
Well, there's been a lot done in the education area that has emptied out the truth of the past and even the merit of our country's moorings, you know.
Well, exactly. Well, the educators have dumped on the older generation. You know, they were racist, they were fascist, they were this, that, and the other. Okay, well, I just pointed that out. One man, one vote cost the Republicans 40 seats, and, well, it's going to take a heroic effort to turn that around at this point. Efren?
Pat, I want to turn now to the Middle East, where Israeli's armed forces are responding to more than 400 rocket attacks from Gaza over the last day. As Chris Mitchell reports from southern Israel, the Jewish state sits on a knife's edge between a ceasefire and a war.
This is the sound of war in southern Israel. Gaza terrorists launched some 400 rockets at Israel. The Iron Dome anti-rocket system struck down about 100. Some fell inside populated areas. This is a building in Ashkelon that took a direct hit from one of the rockets fired out of Gaza about 12 miles to the south. You can see the walls that have been blown out. You can see this is the kitchen. You can see cookies in the cupboards. You can see the damage that had because of the rocket. A man in his 40s died because of this. 2 women were seriously injured. And this is just one of the hundreds of rockets that have been fired out of Gaza into Israel in the past 24 hours. First responders removed the man's body from the rubble. The barrage puts Israelis on edge. Biton Mamon lives next door.
The feeling is very bad. I have a father who is old, he's 19 years old, and he was terrible. Last night he was panic.
Israel police spokesman Mickey Rosenfeld said there are about 1 million Israelis affected by this current round of violence.
Well, the message to the public is to stay safe. When the sirens go off, there are 15 seconds or 30 seconds or 45 seconds to take cover.
The IDF responded by attacking some 150 Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad military targets in Gaza, including a Hamas television station and governmental structures.
I think we're in a difficult period at the moment. It could be 24 hours, 48 hours. It will pass. The IDF is doing everything they can. The Israeli National Police are protecting the civilians within inside the populated areas, within inside all the cities in the south.
The U.S. led the condemnation of the rocket barrages against Israel. Jason Greenblatt tweeted, Israel is forced once again into military action to defend its citizens. We stand with Israel as it defends itself against these attacks. As Israel teeters on the brink of war, Mamon said if it was up to him, he'd know what to do.
Tell Trump to tell Bibi and Lieberman to work to finish this area, Gaza. That's it. They don't want to live in peace. They choose blood.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Ashkelon, Israel.
Eye-opening words, Pat.
You know, what does it say in the Bible? Wisdom is justified by its children. And leaders make dumb mistakes, and then their citizens ultimately have to pay for it. Ariel Sharon, was a friend of mine, or he's still alive, but he was very gracious. We got to know him. But he decided that he was going to make a gesture toward the Palestinians, and he was going to pull out of Gaza. They had a number of Israeli settlers in there, a population that was, the theory was to populate the West Bank with Jews and Israelis, and therefore, you know, keep the population from warfare. So, but he pulled them out, and they were literally forced at gunpoint away from their homes. They were driven out, the Israeli, to their own citizens. And they left Gaza to the Palestinians. What happened to the Palestinians? Hamas took over, a radical group. And now they're in Gaza. And why would they want to do what they're doing? Well, they're radicals. They want to fight. That's their MO. And so, DNA, I should say. And so they want to have fights. So they launch all these rockets against Israel. Well, Israel can't stand that. So what are they going to have to do? They're going to have to send their troops in and literally take back Gaza. If they don't do it, they're going to have a sore spot over and over and over again. So all I can say is they'd better get ready for war, because that's what's going to happen. They can roll over Gaza without a whole lot of problem. I don't think it's going to be any problem. And they need to secure it again. But the fact that they had all those settlements, all those people had businesses and farms and everything taken out of all of them. And it was a tragic, tragic mistake of leadership. I just mentioned about what happened to the Republican Party and how they lost out on this last election. This is how the Israelis have lost out in Gaza. Now, there's something else, by the way. It has nothing to do with global warming. It has nothing to do with automobile emissions. It has nothing to do with natural gas. It has nothing to do with coal-fired furnaces. But according to the scientists, we're in for a record cold. Ephraim, tell us about it.
Pat, as you said, scientists say this winter could bring record cold, and it's all because of a lack of sunspots. Dr. Tony Phillips of spaceweather.com says there's been practically no sunspots in 2018, and that's causing Earth's upper atmosphere to cool and even shrink. If the trend continues, one NASA scientist says we could be seeing record cold temperatures in just a matter of months. Pat, for many of us, it's already too cold.
Well, I'm looking forward to, I've got a few wool garments. I just soon have a little cold, but it can be really rough. And, you know, Joe Bastardi warned about this, that they're forecasting this winter is going to be something. I don't know if we're starting a little ice age or anything, but all this business about global warming now is climate change and, you know.
Get your turtlenecks out.
All right.